Hi, everybody. I hope everyone can hear me at the back. A very good evening. My name is Dr. Trinetra, but that is a bit of a mouthful for many people, so please feel free to call me Trin. And if you must annoy me, then call me Trin Trin, which is my Instagram username. Just the other day, my friend was saying to me, Trin Trin, you need to have an air of mystery to you. You aren't, you put too much out there. There's too much honesty on your profile. You need to tone it down a bit, you know. You need to be enigmatic. And I laughed and I said, okay, fair enough. I may have accidentally turned chronic oversharing into a career, which is how the casting directors of Made in Heaven found me. But that said, for me as a transgender woman, chronic oversharing was not a choice. It just happened. When I was much younger, say 4 or 5 years old, I didn't have necessarily the language to understand who I was. So when I finally found it, I had to explain myself on stages like this, at home, in educational institutions. I had to explain over and over again who I was and what being transgender meant. And for those of you that don't know, a transgender person is someone who does not identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. And I always felt like I just wasn't a boy. That wasn't me, it wasn't working. And I think I realized over time that for our community, our survival is contingent on being understood, to some degree at least. And that sort of takes me back to the time that I was an intern. Any doctors in the house this evening? A show of hands? No? So I'll tell you, for an intern in the hospital doing her MBBS, we are, for lack of a better word, cattle. We're slaves. We do a lot of unpaid labor in the sense that there's a lot of manual labor involved. We do a lot of scut work and a lot of doing discharge summaries and things like that. And so one fine day, I land up in the female ward, all right? And there is a patient. She's wearing slightly boyish clothes, right? Short hair, a bit of facial hair. And the friends have told me that their friend has consumed many sleeping pills and has tried to end their life. And when I looked at that patient, I knew that face all too well. I'd been there in high school, right? I knew what it was like to not know why you're feeling so uncomfortable in your skin, why people don't seem to understand. And the first thing I said to this patient was, your file says female. Do you want me to refer to you as something else? And their face completely changed, completely. And this person suddenly says, you're the only doctor who has asked me that question. Thank you. I don't think people realize that the risk of suicide for an Indian transgender person is nearly 50%. Did you know that 1 in 2 transgender people will attempt suicide before the age of 20? And it's been proven that it's not because of who you are as a human being, but it's because of what you're subjected to. There are social factors involved, right? Being understood, like I said, our survival depends on it. So being mysterious is not really something that we get to do. But a few months later, I wanted to be very mysterious for somebody I had a giant crush on, as we usually do in college, and I wanted to play hard to get. Up until that point, I had only been seen as somebody different. I wasn't given equal treatment as a human being. I'd been thrown out of classes and so on and so forth. But this person treated me like a human being first and then a doctor, and allowed me to pick up the knife. And he taught me how to assist. He taught me how to be a doctor, to be a surgeon, And I learned so much in that time. And by the time my internship ended, we'd become very, very close. He was spending near every day at my house. And like I said, I was smitten. I, for the first time in my life, had in front of me a man that didn't harass me or bully me or see me as any different, but taught me instead, mentored me instead, and also called me very beautiful. And the bar was very, very low at the time, I must say. And it was only when his phone buzzed one day and I saw the wallpaper and it was him and a woman and two beautiful children. That's when it hit me that only spending time in my apartment and not outdoors at a restaurant, never meeting friends, it had a reason. And it boils down to the same thing. It boils down to shame. It boils down to stigma. And I took many, many months to recover from the process of, getting over heartbreak. It was my first. And I think all of that education, all of that privilege and acceptance at home, it didn't protect me from this. And it taught me something very important, that you need to have a certain sense of self-worth, and it needs to come from within. It cannot come from anywhere else. And many, many, thank you. And that came a little late in life, I must admit. And for me, I'll tell you when it happened. I was driving to Andheri for yet another audition, and I find this huge billboard, right? And I think it must have rolled at some point in the background. It was the poster for Made in Heaven Season 2. And amongst those very talented people was the face of a transgender woman, myself. I did not grow up seeing transgender people on billboards, and if I did, I may have settled not for so little in partners, in life, in general. And it took me that moment to open my phone, send a picture of that to everybody, and block him. I was done. Yeah, that's the one. I was done settling. I said, our survival is contingent on being understood. But I must say, I refuse to settle for that. I don't want to just be understood. That's the bare minimum. We don't deserve that. We don't deserve just to survive. We deserve to thrive. We deserve to live. And we will. Thank you.
You'll stay on stage.
Oh, right.
All right, I get to do this 2 times over, so you're going to come and join me yet again on stage. Guys, a huge round of applause. Come on, we are all caffeinated. That was an inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
And we have a couple of minutes to pick your brains.
Sure thing.
I mean, the session was aptly titled Not Made in Heaven, Queer Lives Matter. But your role in Made in Heaven was inspiring for so many of us. Well done on that performance.
Thank you so much.
Trinetra, what was it really like? Because you spoke about your journey and your
Yeah.
trials and tribulations. How much of Trinetra's life and feedback was incorporated into the script for Meher's role?
So by the time I auditioned for the part, the script was done. So there wasn't much for me to add per se, but there were scenes where I felt like there could be changes in the way that Meher spoke. So Zoya was very forthcoming with that. She was like, please tell me at any time, pick up the phone, say what you must. And she did. She incorporated a bunch of that feedback. But how much of Trinetra was, I think, to some extent for sure, because, Meher, you see her go through some really bad experiences, which most of us do in life, but also you see her have amazing parents. I do. My parents took like 10 years to understand the whole process, but the one thing that they said was your education and your healthcare will not be compromised on, no matter what. So that is a huge privilege, but it shouldn't be at the same time, because it's what parents do. And of course, the fact that Meher has a brother who adores her, as do I. And
An elder brother or a younger one?
Younger. So he used to call me Dada for the longest time. He calls me Didi very proudly. It's sweet. Yeah.
Trinetra, another thing I wanted to touch up on was the fact that you are also a very well accomplished social media creator, really busting myths all over Instagram. I'm not going to say influencer because I know you don't like that word, but as a social media creator, there's one level of trolls that you have to deal with your story as well, because it's really something that's disruptive.
Yeah.
Being iconoclastic, and then after Made in Heaven, because all the eyeballs are on you.
Sure.
Did that really change? How did you really cope with it? I'm very curious.
So I don't know how, in touch wood, but after the show came out, it was like 99.999% love. It was just full of, my DMs were full of young queer and trans children and their parents saying that, you know, the visibility is so important because you can't be what you can't see,
Yeah.
you know. You need to see some example somewhere of someone thriving and living in order to think that that can be your future. So that's what it was. Not too much hate, to be honest. No.
Some of these are unique experiences. Also the fact that, you know, your name, Trinetra, very unique,
Yeah.
sounds beautiful.
Thank
But
you.
what was the rationale with picking that? Because this can be inspiring in so many ways.
I think so. Trinetra was a name that I picked for myself. I had the very rare privilege of choosing my own name. It means it's another name for Durga, right? And my mom's Bengali and my father's Telugu, and we lived our entire lives in South India. So I wanted some Bengali connect in the name. And Pujo and saris, it's all very close to my heart. So Trinetra, a rare but beautiful sounding name. It technically means three eyes, but I love it. I think it sounds great.
We all love it. We all love it.
If it's a mouthful, like I said, you can call me Trin Trin.
Trin. That's a really cool Instagram handle, by the way.
Thank you.
But tell me something more in terms of your experience now on such a popular show. I'm guessing it took way too long for a second season of that show to come to us. And we were all waiting anxiously. But now that it's here and you're a
Yeah.
part of it, and that storyline has to continue, no spoilers here. But I'm
Are you
saying,
going to ask me about a season 3? Please don't.
okay, let's not ask you about a season 3. Let's recalibrate that question.
Okay.
Will we see you in a lot more shows, making a lot more content, over and above your social media?
Yes, sir.
Is the cat out of the bag? Are you going to tell us a little bit more about it?
I can't, but good things are happening. And projects have been lined up, touch wood. I'm very, very, very fortunate to be alive at a time that characters are being written. You know, you realize that there's more to representation than just trans people being available to play characters. They need to be written. There need to be people behind the scenes doing the work also. It's not just people in front of the camera, right? So I think that's happening, fortunately. And I can't wait. I can't wait.
That's interesting because it's a very inspiring, powerful story for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
Now, you told us about how there was so much love, rightfully so, from the audience and everyone consuming your content, but also from the community itself, from the LGBT community as well, on your Instagram as well. What was the response like? Especially after your role in that particular show.
I think, you know, for a lot of people out there, being a doctor in itself is it's one of those things in India where if you've done that, you've already attained a certain level of respect in Indian society. And in addition to that, to also sort of dabble in the arts, you know, like science students hate the arts. I'm sure all of you have faced this, that the humanities in the 11th and 12th grades were really looked down upon. And I used to hate that as a science student. And to see parents saying, you know, I think it gives us hope that our kids can do anything regardless of their gender and sexuality. That's great. I love that.
Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for a creative powerhouse, an inspiration, and a disruptor, Trinetra.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you for
you for
having
joining
me.
us, Trinetra.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so much.
listening.